Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, and let's talk about when you make mistakes during crafting. So today's video nearly didn't happen. I made a card and partway through it I made a mistake, used this lovely roses stamp set with coordinating dies, but rather than just delete it all and chuck the card in the bin, I thought we'd give us a chance to talk about what we do when we make mistakes in crafting. So it was all going well. I was stamping it out. I used this lovely grey, and I'm going to show you a colouring technique. So before we get on to the mistakes part, I do want to talk through this technique with you because it's something that I demonstrate a lot when we do craft fairs and on TV, and it's something I get asked a lot about. So I'm using some water-based pens and a little brush here, and I'm going to colour in this lovely rose swag from the stamp set, and I'm using a red to make a reddy pinky rose and some greens for the leaves. So I'm just deciding which red I'm going to use, and I always put a small amount of the colour at the base of a petal and then just drag it out using some water on my brush. So doing that again, look, just a small amount of colour and then drag out the colour using some water. So it's up to you how much colour you put on, depending on how dense you want it to be on the petal, and how much white space or paler areas of the petals that you want. But generally you don't need a huge amount to put colour down there. So you just work your way around one petal after another, or one area after another, a bit of colour, and drag it out with water. You can even get quite quick there and start doing more petals at a time. I did go back in there just on those petals, look, and add a little bit more colour just for a bit of extra depth on those larger petals. So while I'm just colouring the rest of that in, let's have a little chat then about mistakes. The mistake in this card comes later on in the video, and as I say, I was about to throw the whole thing in the bin, not just the card but the recording that I'd done, and start from scratch. Obviously that means for me quite a lot of time, so I thought actually let's not do that. Let's use it to have a discussion about mistakes during our crafting and how it can affect our confidence and what we do to rectify them or get going again. So with this particular card, I didn't throw it in the bin in the end. I managed to salvage it, and I'll talk you through how a little bit later on. But you kind of got two options really when you've made a mistake. You can either try and resurrect either the entire project or parts of the project that you've done. I do believe that most of the time, unless you've done a really big error, then most of the time you will be able to salvage something out of it, whether it's a background or part of a background, or something that you can die cut, fussy cut down, or there's loads of different options. But normally when you sit back and look at it again after maybe a few minutes or a few hours or even a day, there's normally something that you could use out of that again for another project. So that would be my first tip, is just step away from it for a little while and come back and have a look at it again when you're feeling like you want to, whether that's, like I say, minutes, days, whatever, but don't immediately pop it in the bin. If you really feel like afterwards that there's just absolutely no saving this piece of card or this project, do remember that it is just that, generally a piece of card. So as my friend Tony Darrett says, it can always go in the bin and you can start again if you need to. So there's a good thing to say there, that if you do make that decision and you think I can't salvage anything out of this and it's just not working, then do that, bin it, and then let it go. Do not let it knock your confidence. It happens to us all, and that is the whole point of this video. Do not think that us demonstrators, just because we do YouTube videos nearly every day, or we do this a lot for our living, or we go on TV, or we demonstrate at craft shows, do not think that mistakes don't happen to us. They absolutely do. In fact, my design team only today were all saying that they were feeling like they were having a time like that as well at the moment. I'll come back to that a little bit more in a moment. I just want to talk to you about what I'm doing for the background here. So after I finish colouring in the rose, I've just put it aside to dry, and I want to use one of our confetti metallic inks, the Shimmering Sea, which is this lovely pale blue, but I just wanted to add a little bit of extra blue to it and make it a tiny bit darker. So I used a little bit more of one of my Zig watercolour pens and just mix that in. And I'm going to use a resist technique with one of the sentiments to create a background. So we do a lot of cards where the image is in the background and the sentiment goes on top. This card is kind of the reverse of that. I'm going to stamp in embossing ink, and this is our luminosity embossing ink, all over this piece of card that's already been trimmed to slightly smaller than my card blank, and I'm going to heat emboss it with some clear powder, and this is going to resist when I add in some of that lovely Shimmering Sea colour. So I'm just going to heat set the powder first of all, and that's just going to melt it and create a kind of glossy, clear, the words, so they'll pop out from the background blue colour that we're going to use. So the first little mistake here is that I think my sentiment stamp had a little bit of colour still on it from before, so there's areas where it was looking slightly grey. But again, I might have thrown that in the bin and started again to make it absolutely perfect. However, when I started to put the colour down of this colour wash and the sentiment started to resist and pop out, I found that you didn't even notice that there was a tiny bits of grey in some of the W of the words. I think there must have been a bit of black ink maybe still on there. So don't always give up at the first hurdle, keep going, and you might find that you don't even notice it. Can you cover it up? Some of these words will be covered by the flowers and the rose swag itself. So I did go back in as well, wasn't totally happy with the water wash on its own, so I decided to do some splats as well, and then just dried that off. So this is where the big mistake happened. I used the outline die for the rose swag, and I used 2 pieces of tape to hold it in place. Unfortunately, I think the tape that I used, I know we like low tack tape, but I think this was ridiculously low tack and it didn't hold in place very well, and it slipped, and I nearly chucked the die cut in the bin after all that, spending 20 minutes colouring it in. Instead, and I should have kept the camera rolling on this bit, but unfortunately I didn't, I trimmed round the bit where you'd got excess, you get your little white border when you'd use coordinating die cuts. So on one side it was barely anything, if anything at all, and on the other side it was too much. So I basically fussy cut round it. And you'll see at the end, if you're a crafter, you will probably know and you will see where that's happened. A non-crafter, maybe they wouldn't even notice. And also, you might not be wanting to give this card to somebody, you might be just doing it to practice or to hone your skills, so that time is never wasted of colouring. So I do hope that's helped a little bit, guys, and do not let things knock your confidence. Keep going whether you make mistakes or not. Take care, and I will see you next time.